immunities associated with the presidency. The Washington Post today identifies at least 6 ongoing investigations involving the former president, including in New York, where the district attorney is combing through his tax records, and the state's attorney general has subpoenaed his bankers, his chief financial officer, and his son, as well as in Georgia and D.C., where Trump is facing criminal investigations into his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. And that's not all. The paper has also identified at least 29 lawsuits in which he or one of his companies is named as a defendant. Perfect time to bring into our conversation MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissman, former FBI general counsel. I feel like we have done a good job staying on top of news as it breaks on the legal front, but to see them all laid out in David Farenthal's great piece with his colleagues at the Post was staggering.
Yeah. So I think the first thing to make sure people understand, especially in light of your last two segments, is why is Donald Trump not being held responsible for deliberate inaction in connection with the pandemic or his, promoting racist tropes with respect to Asian Americans, which I personally think I contrast that with when 9/11 happened. One of the very first things that President Bush said is this is not about the Muslim community. And the reason is that there's a legal doctrine called executive privilege. And so the president is virtually immune from almost anything he does in office if it can be shown that there's even a tangential connection to his role as president. So that leads to the numerous civil and criminal investigations and some civil lawsuits that are already pending with respect to former President Trump, of which, of course, the most serious are the criminal investigations in New York, in D.C., and in Georgia.
I want to ask you about all the Trump stuff, but it just strikes me that in your perch as general counsel to the FBI, you would have been intimately involved in what the FBI is dealing with now. We don't have a lot of visibility into it. So I want to ask you about this report released from the intelligence communities yesterday about the nature of the threat from violent domestic extremism. I mean, what they've shared with us makes clear that the people who represent the gravest threat in the views of the intelligence community and the FBI are people who subscribe to Donald Trump's lies. Is there any scenario where his speech and his conduct isn't also under scrutiny?
Well, as I said, I think that's going to be under scrutiny. But the question is, what does that mean in terms of liability? Civil liability, and there are a couple lawsuits in D.C. that seek to hold him responsible for the actions on January 6th. And of course, morally, that's easy to do, but he will claim that that has some connection to his presidential powers. I think that argument, is tenuous at best, and I think that's where you could see liability. With respect to your larger point, one of the things that's, terrific about Merrick Garland being confirmed and Lisa Monaco, who's, likely to be confirmed, is that they have enormous experience on domestic terrorism matters. And, after 9/11, we were very focused on foreign terrorism, but I think that you're going to see the next 4 years an enormous amount of investigation on that. It is a little bit fraught because it is really important to make sure that you are not infringing on First Amendment protected activities. But I think that's where Merrick Garland and Lisa will be very, very careful about how those investigations are conducted.
I want to ask you about Michael Cohen. He's going into Vance's investigators for an 8th time. He also cooperated with the Mueller probe. You know a little bit of what Michael Cohen knows. What could he possibly be talking about on visit number 8? This is speculation, but I think that they have to be asking Michael Cohen about the documents that they just got from the Trump accounting firm. These are the documents that
the Manhattan District Attorney's Office has fought for and gone to the Supreme Court twice and won twice, and finally has it in their possession. And I'm sure they are trying to get any leads, any information, and see if there's any sort of intel they can gather from Michael Cohen on those documents.
Do you think there are?
You know, I suspect that he has some inside information. I still do not think he will end up being a witness for them because he has a whole host of baggage. But I think you want to exhaust all information so that you can pursue any and all leads. I am confident that this is not the only person that they are speaking to. This may just be the only person they're speaking to who is perfectly willing to talk to the public about what he's doing.